You've probably heard of it, right? Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's the book that claimed it would spill all the secrets. What the rich teach their kids about money that the rest of us never learn. But wow, behind this massive bestseller, there's a whole story. We're talking inspiration, a really controversial philosophy, and a mystery that seriously took decades to solve. So let's get into it. Let's break down this absolute giant of the finance world. Okay, so just how big was this book? Well, calling it a success is frankly a massive understatement. We're talking over 40 million copies sold around the world since it was first self-published way back in '97. I mean, think about that number. It's huge. And for so many of those readers, it just completely rewired how they thought about everything. Their money, their jobs, even what it means to be wealthy. And believe me, it didn't just stop with one book. Oh no. Rich Dad, Poor Dad blew up and became the foundation for this huge global empire. Suddenly, there were more books, there was the cash flow board game, there were these high-priced seminars, all of them promising to teach you the secrets of the rich. It really became more than just a book. It was a full-blown movement. So you gotta wonder, right? What was it about this book that just grabbed everyone's attention? Well, to really get why it was such a phenomenon, we've got to look at its core message. It's a simple idea, but for the time, it was pretty radical, and it just clicked with millions of people. All right, so let's get into the philosophy. The real genius of the book, what makes it so powerful, is how simple it is. It's almost like a fable. Kiyosaki basically builds his whole argument around the lessons he says he learned from two totally different dads. So, on one side, you have his poor dad. This was his actual father, a super educated guy with a government job who always said the same thing. Go to school, get good grades, find a safe, secure job. You know the drill. But then you've got Rich Dad. This was his friend's father, an entrepreneur who had a totally different take. He believed a traditional job was a trap. And right there, that's the whole conflict of the book. It's the poor dad mindset, trading your time for a paycheck, versus the rich dad mindset, which is all about making your money work for you. And to get this point across, Rich Dad had these super simple definitions. First, an asset. Forget all the complicated financial jargon. An asset is simply something that puts money in your pocket. That's it. Think of things like a rental property that pays you every month, or stocks that give you dividends. And a liability? Well, you guessed it, it's the exact opposite. A liability is anything that takes money out of your pocket. Things like your car payment, your mortgage, all that credit card debt. Basically, anything that's constantly draining your cash. Now, this leads to what is probably Kiyosaki's most famous and most controversial point. He says the main reason most people are stuck financially is that they spend their lives buying liabilities that they think are assets. And his big example? Your house or your car. He argues the rich do the total opposite. They are laser focused on just one thing, acquiring assets that produce income. He visualized this whole concept in something he calls the cash flow quadrant. So take a look. On the left side, you've got E for employee and S for self-employed. According to Kiyosaki, if you're over there, you're basically stuck trading your time for money and you're getting hit with the highest taxes. The whole point of the Rich Dad philosophy is to move over to the right side. That's B for business owner, where you own a system, and I for investor, where your money is doing the heavy lifting for you. And that, he says, is the only real path to financial freedom and supposedly lower taxes. So you can see why this message hit home for so many people. It was simple, it was a little rebellious, and it just connected with a massive audience. For a lot of folks, it wasn't just another boring finance book. It felt like someone was finally giving them permission to think about money in a totally new way, and that led to a ton of praise. And it wasn't just everyday people picking it up. It got some huge celebrity endorsements that really pushed it into the spotlight. You had Will Smith saying he used it to teach his son about financial independence. Damon John, the guy from FUBU and Shark Tank, called it one of his favorites. Even Donald Trump jumped on board and co-wrote a couple of books with Kiyosaki. I mean, that's how the Rich Dad brand went totally mainstream. But forget the celebrities for a second. The real story is how it empowered just regular, everyday people. Take this comment from a Reddit user, for example. They said that reading it way back when changed the way they thought about money. And you have to remember, this was before you could just go on YouTube and find a million finance gurus. For many, this book was a genuine aha moment, a totally new way of looking at their financial future. Okay, but it wasn't all sunshine and roses. As the book got more and more famous, the critics started coming out. And let me tell you, the criticism was every bit as intense as the praise. Just to give you a taste, check out this quote from financial writer John T. Reed.
He didn't just, disagree with a few points. He came right out and called it one of the dumbest financial advice books I have ever read. Ouch. He argued it was just full of bad, even dangerous advice.
And Reed was definitely not the only one saying this. The criticisms tend to fall into a few key buckets. First, a lot of people say the advice is just way too vague. It's more motivational speech than a practical how-to guide. Then there's the huge question of whether the story is even true or if it's just made up. A really big concern is that it pushes people to take on dangerously high levels of debt without really explaining the massive risks. And maybe the biggest knock against him is the idea that he's a grifter, that he didn't get rich using these strategies, but by selling a dream about getting rich to everyone else.
And these controversies weren't just talk. They spilled out into the real world. The whole Rich Dad seminar business got hit with class action lawsuits from people who paid thousands of dollars and felt like they'd been completely misled. Plus, his entire operation has been put under the microscope in some pretty critical investigative documentaries. All right, so all of this brings us to the biggest mystery of all, the one question that kind of hangs over this entire saga. Was Rich Dad even a real person? I mean, for years, this was the question on everyone's mind. Was this wise mentor real, or was he just a character Kiyosaki made up to sell books? Well, the answer took almost 20 years to come out. For a long, long time, Kiyosaki was super vague about it. Then, back in 2003, he made this notorious comment where he basically told an interviewer to think of Rich Dad like Harry Potter. Naturally, everyone thought, okay, so he's fake. But then, a huge piece of the puzzle dropped in 2009. The obituary for a well-known Hawaiian hotel owner named Richard Kiyosaki actually mentioned that he was the inspiration for Rich Dad. It wasn't until 2016, though, that Kiyosaki himself finally came out on his radio show and confirmed it. Yes, Richard Kiyosaki was the real Rich Dad.
So, okay, we've got the philosophy, the massive success, the harsh criticism, and we even know who Rich Dad was. So, what's the final verdict? What is this book's lasting legacy?
Honestly, it seems to have a dual legacy. On the one hand, you absolutely cannot deny that it was a financial wake-up call for millions of people. It got them to question the whole go to school, get a job script, and actually start learning about money. But on the other hand, it's kind of the poster child for the modern guru controversy. It's constantly criticized for selling a simple, maybe even